Abortion triggering lots of criticism by Catholics outside the Democratic convention. Then very big criticism from the Denver Archbishop, who decided to take Pelosi to task.
People come on and sit down with us. And sit right down.
Nancy Pelosi coming on a whole lot of fire at this Democratic convention from Catholics over comments she made about abortion. The House Speaker saying, and I quote, "I would say that as an ardent practicing Catholic, this is an issue that I have studied for a long time, and what I know is over the centuries, the doctors of the church have not been able to make that definition." St. Augustine said, at 3 months, we don't know. The point is that it shouldn't have an impact on the woman's right to choose. Well, that comment fueling protests at the Democratic convention, not only among Catholics, leading the protest, Denver Archbishop Chaput, who joins us right now. By the way, when the bishop came in here, everyone straightened up. We stopped cursing. We stopped anything. We would best behavior. All right, Father, thank you very much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. So she says, no problem on this issue, and no confusion on this issue. You say she's confused.
She's very confused. From the very beginning to the present moment, the church has had a very clear position that it's always wrong, sinful, to destroy unborn human life. And there's never an excuse for that. There never has been an excuse for that in church teaching. And so it was very important for those of us who are responsible for the teaching of the church to say something publicly about it, because she spoke this on a national news program that has a huge audience, and we have to do our best to try to make sure Catholics understand that what she says is not an option.
Well, what she was saying also, and I don't remember St. Augustine ever saying anything about 3 months, but the 3-month thing, what's the deal with that?
Well, St. Augustine did not have a sophisticated embryology, and there was all kinds of discussion. When can the human body receive the human soul? When it is formed enough to do that? But even for those who said that the soul came later, there was a sense that if you destroyed life at any point, it was still a very serious sin. And now, of course, biologically, we know that from the moment of conception, a human being begins to be a human being.
So Catholic dogma is, well, I should disclose I'm a Catholic, but the Catholic dogma states at conception, life begins.
At conception, life begins.
So anyone who sees other than that is not a Catholic in good standing?
Anyone who says other than that is not following the teachings of the church. If they don't accept the correction of the church, because that's our obligation to clearly say what the church says, then they ought to really rethink whether or not they're serious about being Catholics.
All right, then switch to Joe Biden. Father, you have, he says, a dutiful, faithful Catholic who regularly receives communion each week. He's pro-choice. What do you think?
Well, I think that the rules that apply to me and to you and to everyone who's a Catholic apply to our public officials, and they apply to Senator Biden as they would to any of us. And if people are not in communion with the church on the foundational issues of faith and morals, and abortion is one of those foundational issues, then we're not supposed to receive communion. Now, this kind of teaching...
So I'm sorry, sir. If he is on your communion line, do you give him communion?
Well, I would want the opportunity to speak to him about it before making a statement on television about something like this. But if one is not in communion with what the church teaches, to present oneself for communion is not being honest.
All right, this came up, as you know, Bishop, in 1984. Geraldine Ferraro, the Archbishop of New York at the time, had said, no, Geraldine, you cannot, and I would not give you communion.
Well, she was in his diocese. He was her bishop. And I think bishops need to have that kind of personal conversation with all Catholics on these kind of matters before they would act in a public way.
Let me ask you, Father, I notice there's always a distinction between practicing Catholics and non-practicing Catholics, but speaking as a bloc, they tend to vote Democratic, even given your views on abortion. Why is that?
Well, I think from the very beginning of the Catholic presence in the United States, there was a sense that Catholics were a minority and are not always appreciated by the majority of the population. And in the early days of the Democrat Party, the Democrats seemed to be most concerned about the needs of the Irish, the Polish, the Italian immigrants. And so there was a historical loyalty there that's very important. And also, popularly, the Democrats have the image of caring for the poor, and that's a very, very important part of our Catholic self-identity, to care for the poor.
But the practicing Catholics are the one that tend, it's a little closer there, right?
Well, I think people who know their faith know how important the foundational issue of abortion is.
Okay.
And if a party platform is opposed to that foundational issue, that's a serious matter to consider.
All right, Father, thank you very, very much.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate your coming by.
Thank you.
We'll all behave.
Okay,
We'll all
good.
behave. All right.